Everyone has their passion and what they're exceptionally good at, and it's only about 20% of what they do. And if you find people who can focus their 20% on what you need, they are so much more productive than you ever were. And they are so much more committed because they actually like what they're doing and they care about it where you were dreading it. Even though you care about your business and its success, they more than compensate for that. The thing about it is so often we have personal preference in there. And that's one of the things where our ego gets in the way, myself included, where we want it done a certain way, and about 20% of our expectations is probably personal preference and not really down to right or wrong. And so I've had to realize, in order to truly let go of something, in order to have it off of my to-do list onto somebody else's radar and have them have complete ownership of that task, I need to be okay with 80%. And that is good enough and probably better than what it would be if I was 100% satisfied.
Welcome to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kraus, and this is the show where we're as passionate about personal growth as we are about saving the planet. We know that life's not just a list of boxes to check off, and we don't sit around just waiting for lightning to strike. We are action takers. We're proactive, passionate, and determined to massively impact this earth and the people on it. For as much as I've already learned throughout my own life, I know there's a lifetime more to go, which is why I'm taking this journey right alongside you. We can do the hard things we dream of. We can answer our soul's deepest callings, and we don't have to do it alone. Our journey towards greater purpose, fulfillment, and joy evolves just as we do. It starts right here, right now, and again tomorrow. This is what it means to be here for more.
Welcome back to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kraus, and if you've been listening to Here for More podcast the past few episodes, you know that I've been diving into this concept of working smarter, not harder. I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and I've been very inspired to now go out into the world and find people who are actually living this 4-hour work week, so to speak. I know that looks different for everyone. It might not actually be 4 hours, but this concept of getting some of our time back by working smarter. So today with me, I have Rachel Luther, who she is an entrepreneur. She started as a virtual assistant, and now basically she's going to explain it a lot better than I am. But I know that she's working smarter through a lot of outsourcing. So I'm excited to dive into this concept. Rachel, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Natalie. I get very excited to talk about outsourcing and getting your time back. And you're right, that does look different for every single person. But for me, I started out as a virtual assistant. I have a background in bookkeeping as well as communications. And so I just started offering virtual assistant services before people even knew what a virtual assistant was. It was about 2010 when I started doing that. The idea wasn't original to me, but a lot of what I did was education at that point. And from there, I realized owning my own business in the way that I was running it was really just like owning my own job. I was doing so much time-committed work at my computer, and that wasn't serving my life. That wasn't why I started my business. I started my business because I was pregnant with my oldest child, and I wanted to be at home with my child, but I wanted to bring in some extra money on the side as well. I also wanted my own thing. I wanted to do something besides be a mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I am still very much, I've got 4 kids and I homeschool. Like, I'm very much a mom at home, but I wanted other things as well. And so I had to figure out how to survive in that. Like, how do I juggle work? How do I juggle being a mom? I also have a degree in communications and theater performance on top of the accounting and bookkeeping background, and I wanted to utilize that as well. Well, at that point in time, that wasn't even on my radar. I couldn't perform at all because I was juggling between work and raising my children. And so I just had to figure out what would actually work. And this was before I had read any of the whole 4-hour work week, which I love, and so many of those types of things. But my husband essentially sat me down and said, this isn't sustainable. And so I was working as a virtual assistant, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, working until my kids woke up, then jumped to mom mode and did mom things, put them down for naps and ran back to my phone or my laptop and was doing more work, and then they would get up and just bounce back and forth. Then I would shove my kids at my husband when he walked in the door for dinner and go work until bedtime. And then hopefully I was done so that I could spend time with my husband. But oftentimes I wasn't done until like 11 o'clock at night to get up and just do the same thing over again. And that's often what entrepreneurs do when they start their business. They put in the work, they have the tenacity, they have the grunt work or the ability to do the grunt work to make it happen. And that's a wonderful quality, but there is a smarter way. And I love the way you like work smarter, not harder. And that is what I started to incorporate. And really, that came down to the services that I was offering, and I didn't even realize it at the time. As a virtual assistant, I just started expanding my company. And I realized that there were several businesses that needed the same kind of relief that I needed in my life. And for us, that solution would be business support. And so me doing services by myself grew as I started to outsource by me just finding people who were passionate to do the things that I dreaded. And we all have those things. Like, especially in business, we start it because we're passionate about something or we're good at something. We oftentimes will fall into what our business is. That's not always the case. Sometimes you go and you buy something, but in general, there's a reason that we started that business, bought that business, or find ourselves realizing that we own a business now. And so I started focusing on what that was for me and started finding people who, what that is for them was doing the services that we were offering and doing the things that I didn't like. And so I hate hiring. I hate HR. And so that was one of the things that I started outsourcing. And the first person I hired was just a bookkeeper to help with the bookkeeping aspect of it. And that is one of the first places that often people will find that they can outsource. And I highly recommend that. But started there just with getting a little bit of help so that I had some breathing room in my life. And so it just allowed me to not stay up until 11 working, but I could sit down and watch TV with my husband. And then slowly it became more than that, and I didn't have to work during nap times as much, or I was able to enjoy dinner with my family because I was starting to outsource things in my business. And that's kind of like the journey that I went on to get from where I was then, getting up at 4:30 and staying up till after 11 and just being consumed by my business, to where then I now, 10 plus years later, a team of 20 later, am able to juggle homeschooling my 4 kids, because now I've added to my family, and my family has grown, and I can homeschool as well as run my company in the niche area that I have the most impact. And I can also perform in theater and make small films and do that type of thing. And I have time for those things as well as spending time with my husband in the evenings or to have coffee in the morning. And all of that comes back down to, like what Natalie, what you said was working smarter. And so many times business owners just try to do it all themselves, and they don't feel like they can afford it, or they don't feel like someone else will spend the care and have the passion for their business. But what I found is, as far as that passion goes, when you find people who it's their 20%, if you go to the whole 80-20 rule, like everyone has their passion and what they're exceptionally good at, and it's only about 20% of what they do. And if you find people who can focus their 20% on what you need, they are so much more productive than you ever were. And they are so much more committed because they actually like what they're doing and they care about it, where you were dreading it. Even though you care about your business and its success, they more than compensate for that. So then all of a sudden, their productivity is so much more than what yours was. And your entire 100% is now functioning at the 20% expertise because you've divvied it out to all the people who work in that 20%. And so, I don't know, that's kind of how I've grown over the last 10 plus years, and how just kind of the high level concepts of where this has impacted my life. And so, yeah, that's kind of just a rough overview, I guess.
No, that is wonderful. And when you speak it through those steps, it makes so much sense. like really hearing it as another entrepreneur and going through my own journey, because when you start, it's like, there's all these things that you have to do to run a business, but it's such a learning process. And all of a sudden there's more and more and more. And you're like, I knew I'd have to do these things, but it's just always more than you realize. And so then hearing you lay it out, it's like, oh, well, of course, like, why wouldn't I go get someone else who this is their zone of expertise and something they really love to do this for me? I think, there's a few things there, like you mentioned, not being able to afford it or being worried about not being able to afford it. Also, though, I think a huge one is being weary of releasing control. So yes. I'm sure you felt that. How did you start to navigate that and give up some of that control?
Yes. So as a type A personality, quite the perfectionist. I know what I like and I like what I like and I want what I like. It's just that simple. But it's not always that simple, sadly. So what I really had to learn as far as relinquishing control is finding the right people in order to let them actually own those responsibilities. I had to realize there are people who are better than me at XYZ things. And so I need to find them. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And if I am the smartest person in the room, I am in the wrong room. Like they are not the people that I want on my team. And so I find people who are better at things than I am so that then I can rest assured that they're going to do it better, which is really what we're looking for. The thing about it is so often we have personal preference in there. And that's one of the things where our ego gets in the way, myself included, like I'm in that hour, where we want it done a certain way. And about 20% of our expectations is probably personal preference and not really down to right or wrong. And so I've had to realize in order to truly let go of something, in order to have it off of my to-do list onto somebody else's radar and have them have complete ownership of that task, I need to be okay with 80%. And that is good enough and probably better than what it would be if I was 100% satisfied. Yeah. Because my preferences possibly are inhibiting. And so I need to be willing to let go of that and say, hey, you know what? I was thinking this, but I see you went this route. I'm going to trust that makes more sense. And I push back. I ask questions, but I also surround myself with people who will tell me why I'm wrong. And I love that. I don't mind being told I'm wrong. That means I'm growing and I'm learning. And so I will push back and say, well, why is this? And then they come back to me, ideally, if it's the right person with data or reasons to back the decision that they made. And then now I know more. I'm smarter as a result, and we go the better direction. So that's really how you have to deal with the whole relinquishing control. Yeah. It's really gaining a perspective and losing some of your ego, which I personally kind of think all business owners have. There's a reason we went out on our own. There's a reason we had the guts to do it. And kudos to us. Like, that's awesome. But there is a little bit of, we like to be in control. We like to make the decision. We like to have the final say. And that's not always best for us. So surrounding ourselves with people who can make better decisions, that lets us truly outsource, like really get those responsibilities off our to-do list, off of our mental load, so that we have space for other things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a practice of checking our ego at the door and really learning how to push it aside. I've totally heard that rule, that people, what is it? Like, if someone can do something 80% as good as you can, like, just let them do it. That's, I think, kind of along the same lines of what you were saying. But yeah, because that last 20% really could just be personal preference. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's time to let it go because it's still going to get done really well. Something that I was thinking about as you were saying this, well, two things. One, you mentioned how you don't like hiring, you dread hiring, which I know is obviously involved in outsourcing. You have to hire the people. And then even just making the time to do that. That's where I've found myself caught up. I have all these things to do. Of course, we're all busy. And then I'm like, well, I'm so busy that I don't have time to look for someone else. So, it comes up with this a little bit of fear or just dread because you don't like it around the actual act of hiring someone. And then the time it takes to find someone and vet them. And, what is that also just putting your ego aside? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, that really, and this is not for in every situation, but I really think that goes back to my company that I own, Check Off Your List. They take over a lot of that responsibility for you. If you go and find a virtual assistant or a back office support firm where it's a group of professionals, a group of experts in all different areas of back office support, it's much easier to find the talent that you need. You can hire individually for each niche area. So you can hire someone to do your social media strategy. You can hire someone to do your website design. You can hire a graphic designer to do your marketing, brochures and graphics and all of those things. You can hire a bookkeeper. You can hire someone in HR to help you hire and filter through all of the people who are applying for your positions. But it takes a lot of work to find and manage all of those people. And that's a process of outsourcing. So what I actually ended up doing was starting a company that does all of those things for our clients. And so Check Off Your List is a full service back office firm where we do all areas of back office support. So a business can come to us and say, I need help. And we can then connect them with the people who need to help them on an as needed basis. So we can work with them on a few hours a month for their bookkeeping, work with them for a few hours a week on their admin and a few hours a week on their social media and marketing. And then as needed on top of that, do some HR for some other things. And that one relationship meets those needs. And so that's a great solution for that type of issue. And it's not a solution for everyone. There are benefits to like a independent virtual assistant or a unique niche firm and all of those things, but that does become time consuming as far as hiring goes. It becomes time consuming as far as management goes. And that is one of the benefits of using a full service firm, which is what I recommend and what our clients benefit from.
Yeah. And that makes complete sense because when you were saying how you have a team now of 20 or so people, I'm immediately thinking like 5 or 20 different individuals. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would take more time. I feel like just to send an email to each one of them, so it makes complete sense to get when you're at the point that you need that much help, that you can outsource that much, to have them all in one place. So that kind of makes me think of this question. Obviously, we're talking about outsourcing for entrepreneurship, but I know it's not just for entrepreneurs. So who is outsourcing for? Who is it not for?
So outsourcing is for the busy person. In my mind, it doesn't have to just be an entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be a working professional necessarily. It could be a busy stay-at-home mom. It just is someone who needs balance back in their life. And so depending on who you are and what your goals are, that determines what you outsource. And I kind of tackle that in a specific way so that it lets you know what you need to outsource within, which then lets you know who you need to be outsourcing to. And so I kind of just break that down. Depending on the person, the process is still the same. I make a list of just everything that I have to do. And so just everything at work, everything at home, everything with homeschooling because we homeschool, everything with acting or whatever production I'm working on in whatever capacity, all of those things. It's an everything list. Nothing is too big. Nothing's too small. It all needs to go on there. And then I can dissect through that and start marking things that I know I personally need to do. So depending on what that is, then I know if it has to be me. I have to do the podcast interviews because I'm the person who does the podcast. I can't outsource that. That's just not possible. You can't do that either, Natalie. Right. You can maybe have some guest people and lighten your load from time to time, but no, that's not how it works. So that would be a you thing. For me, that's that. For acting, if I have lines to memorize, that's me. I can't find somebody to do my lines for me.
Yeah.
For homeschooling, well, what does that mean? That depends. And all those different things. So you you look at what is unique to you. You have to do it. And then you're left with this other list of things that you now have the opportunity to outsource. Any of those things are free game to outsource. So that could be yard work, that could be meal prep, that could be cleaning, that could be grocery store, that could be general errands, it could be bookkeeping for your business, marketing, web design, HR, it just depends at that point what's left. And then I kind of try to start looking at those things, like, what do I keep putting off? What is on my to-do list for too long because I don't want to do it? What do I keep putting off, and then finally get to it, or even don't? Whatever that is, start there. Because those are the things that are mentally stressing you out. Like, they are more work mentally than actually just doing it. And so getting those things off of your plate mentally and physically, then you have more capacity to be able to address the other things more effectively. So I always recommend starting there, and you start to see a trend. Some people are more lean towards marketing. So they're going to be more happy to do their social media and some of those things. Others, it's just not their natural inclination. They're not inclined to do that. They don't want to do that. So they might hold on to their bookkeeping a little longer because numbers are easy and I just do that real quick and no big deal. Or you may find cleaning very relaxing and recharging.
Right.
And so that might be some of your just downtime for, scrubbing a bathroom and having a clean bathroom at the end makes you feel like you accomplished something, and it feels good. So it depends on the person as to what they outsource, but people know what that is for them.
Yeah.
And so then definitely. Once they start there, it just keeps growing at that point.
I'm sure it's something that once you kind of get the hang of the first thing you outsource, then you're like, oh, I want to do it over here. I'm sure it just feels that way. And you just want it to keep going, and because you learn the power of it, right?
Right. And I joke that I am actually just a very lazy person who just doesn't want to do anything, which is so not true at all. I still work all day long. I'm up before 7 and, going all day long, but I'm doing the things that I choose to do, which allows me to have the energy and the joy to do a full work day. And it impacts me less because I enjoy every single thing on my to-do list because I've outsourced. And getting there is a process, but yes, it's almost addicting in that it's like, I hate doing this. Who can I get to do that? Like, who do I need to call to make this happen without me? And you learn how to do that, how to keep a radar for solving your own problems that way. And so, yes, it's definitely something that once you start, it's hard to stop in a good way, I think. I think it's a very good thing.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge learning curve, I think, in any business, especially in entrepreneurship, but even as an employee, learning how to release control and be able to fill your life with more things that you want to do, the things that you're choosing to do because it brings you joy, not the things that you have to do. That's an incredible feeling. So, what is your life? Tell us about your life now. What does it look like now that you are able to outsource? And what does your life look like now?
Yeah, so it's a lot different than it was 10 plus years ago. I don't get up at 4:30 in the morning anymore because I am not a morning person, but I do get up about 7 and I have coffee with my husband. Like, we just sit at our kitchen table. He makes me a latte before I get up because he's a morning person. I have no idea why, but he will get up and get ready for the day, make me coffee, and I literally roll out of bed and sit down at the kitchen table and like, hi, what's going on? And we have coffee, and that really helps focus our day as far as homeschooling, as far as work at Check Off Your List, his job, running errands that evening. As our kids get older, we become more and more of a taxi service. So it's our time to touch base, which is very critical for us and not something we had the luxury of without outsourcing, because that's valuable time, high productivity, like in the morning for a lot of people. But we do that. And then I spend the majority of my day with my kids, homeschooling and bouncing between doing lessons with them and work meetings and responding to emails and doing things. And so I have to have a system to keep myself organized and be able to bounce back and forth. It's not exactly multitasking, but it's being able to pivot quickly and easily, which comes down to to-do lists and keeping organized and that type of thing. But to make my life easier that way, I actually outsource our lesson planning. So I have a company that outlines what my kids need to do every week in their lessons, kind of to keep them at or above grade level, to make sure that we've done a year's worth of work and all of those things, because I realized I wanted to homeschool not to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I don't have a degree to be a teacher. I'm not passionate about their math or their English or science, any of that. I don't care what they're learning there, really. Like, obviously, I want them to be educated. So I outsourced that because I was spending hours each week being a teacher, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So now I can just sit down with my kids and do school with them, which is why I homeschool. Like, I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to be the biggest voice in their life. And so I'm able to do that now because I'm not trying to do all the things in all areas. I have a cleaning lady come every other week to just do a deep clean. And that just relieves my mental stress of knowing when the last time my toilets were scrubbed. Yeah. And so, like, that is helpful. And then evenings are run chauffeuring and at rehearsal. So if I'm in a production, I often will be at rehearsal until 10 o'clock at night or so, and then heading back home. So some evenings are spent with the family, some are at rehearsal. And I try to devote, blocks of time throughout the day to then touch base on all the different things to keep myself focused in all the different things, because I have a lot that I juggle, and the goal is to have myself make the biggest impact in the littlest amount of time. And so that is what I do in all the areas that I have going on, and in all the areas where I chose to say yes. And really, I pin it down to, like, why did I say yes to this? What are the things that made me choose this? And so I'm going to do that, and that part only. And how can I outsource everything else? So that's kind of what my life is like now.
I can hear the joy just in the fact that you get to be with your kids and you get to act and to do these things. And you've really worked this down to almost like a science of how it all flows together, which is incredible. And there's so many things there, which I know you're intentionally choosing, but I'm sure can get overwhelming from time to time. So what do you do when it does feel like too much, or you have, just that overwhelm that inevitably sets in, especially when you have balls in all these different courts, kind of, so to speak? What do you do when you start to feel that overwhelm?
That is typically when it's time for me to go back to my everything list and figure out what is on my to-do list that needs to not be there. Once I've reached that point, I've allowed too many things to creep onto my to-do list that shouldn't be. That could mean I need to outsource more. I'm still doing these reports in QuickBooks for my company. Really, I can have Christy do these specific things, and then I don't have to do it anymore. It doesn't take real long, but that's just something that I have to do that takes my mental capacity, stresses me out, whatever. So looking at even just the littlest things to get them off my plate, and it really comes down to the mental capacity of it. Yeah. Because a lot of that isn't as much as there's not enough time in the day, as much as it is like mental capacity and stress in those types of scenarios. For me anyway, like there's time in the day, but when I get overwhelmed and stressed, I find myself scrolling my phone more and my productivity going down. And so oftentimes it's not even that I don't have the time, it's that there's a mental disconnect in that overwhelm. And so if I go back to my to-do list and start to pinpoint, hey, I never did outsource that. I know I can. I just need to take that 10 minutes to write out the instructions or the email or outline what I want in order to make that happen. And once I do that, that then relieves that stress. And there is something that is stress relieving about hitting send on that email. And you're like, yes, someone else is going to do it. And so that is what I do at that point in time. I also have to evaluate, is there something I need to just say no to? Am I not passionate about this anymore? Is this not serving my family and me, or am I not serving in ways that I want to serve? Then that is also a part of it. Sometimes you just say no, and I have to realize, oh, well, I've added these 3 things over here. This thing is no longer a priority, and so I'm going to have to say no to that.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of both. But going back to my to-do list is really where I determine what's what.
And that's important to know the difference of those two, for sure. And within that, I know you mentioned your husband and being a big source of support for you. So talk to me about the support that he provides in your life that allowed you to start to figure these things out. Because obviously this is something that you've been working on now for 10 years, right? And figuring out how to navigate it and what needs to be outsourced and what doesn't, and just figuring out how to manage all that and to homeschool your children. Obviously support, especially within your own household, is so important. How did he kind of evolve into this process with you?
Yeah, that is one of the things that was a process over time, for sure. Just as, owning a business is a process over time. And his support of me was definitely that same type of a process. As my business grew, I needed to rely on him more. He doesn't, at first, he didn't do anything for my business necessarily, but he is a very involved dad and was from the beginning. So being able to just throw my children at him when he came in in the door from work, like that was his contribution and that was him helping. So I think that was the biggest thing at the very beginning, was definitely co-parenting. It wasn't just my responsibility to take care of our children, and it wasn't just my responsibility to cook dinner. There were times where he's like, well, I'm heading home, and I'm like, well, what's for dinner? That's not just my job. And so we, share that and share household responsibilities, all of those things. And that's how it kind of started. But then as my business grew, there were needs that he could meet better than I could as far as my business goes. And so we just tackled it in the same way. And he has a background in video and audio production as well as in IT support. So he handles all of the IT support for my business as well as some of our clients who we do IT support for. Then he also does all the recording and editing for my podcast. And all of those types of things have grown as my business has evolved. And so it's been a process just like anything else, but it's the same type of thing as outsourcing your business. Like we look at our family in ways as a business, and who does what better, who more naturally is inclined to do this and who's more naturally inclined to do that. So I don't wash very many dishes because my husband can see a dirty sink and know that the dishes need washed, but he will never dust the fireplace. It's just not going to happen. So he never dusts the fireplace and I rarely ever wash dishes. And that's okay. He will process our dirty laundry through the washer and dryer, but then I sort, fold, and facilitate the children putting things away, that type of thing. And that works out well for us because that's what we're inclined to do. And that just comes down to logistics. His office is right by our laundry room. So he hears the ding and can just go and make those things happen. So just looking at each thing and figuring out who's the better candidate to do it and then going forward with that. But the 80-20 principle also has to apply there too. I have to be okay if the dishes sit a little longer than I want, or I have to be okay if every once in a while those leggings ended up in the dryer. It's just, it's okay. And he has to go the same way too. And where sometimes when I cook dinner, I don't cook what he wants because I'd rather have something else, and that's okay. He has hot food and he didn't have to make it. So we all give and take in that to truly not have to be in charge of everything.
That is such a good reminder, especially in your own household, because I think so often, and every situation's different, of course.
Sure.
But sometimes there's this like, oh, well, I did the dishes last night. You got to do the dishes tonight. Or I made dinner last night and you make dinner tonight. And there's almost this like checking yourself to say, okay, is this even? Is this fair? How do I feel about it? But you make a really good point that maybe that just is something that he will do, is wash the dishes and you'll dust the fireplace, and that's okay. And so even letting our ego go there to say like, hey, it's okay if he doesn't do the fireplace, or it's okay if I don't do the dishes all the time. Like there's nothing like wrong with that. And sometimes it's made to seem like, oh, you never do dishes? Or like, you're putting my leggings in the dryer or something. I totally relate to that because I've done that too, where I'm like, hey, you didn't do this. And then I can take a step back and say, oh, you know what? But actually, I'm just so glad you did it at all.
Right. And it's really in the perspective and the way that you look at it. And keeping score, trying to be fair and even is actually a lot more work than serving each other. Really, and just doing what you do best and contributing that way. And there are certainly things where it's like, okay, we got to, rock, paper, scissors, or draw straws or something because nobody wants to do this. Yeah. And that's okay too. But it definitely eliminates those if you organically do the things that you're inclined to and, let other things go. Then you're drawing straws much less frequently.
Yeah. And I like the idea almost to look at that as like your intro to outsourcing, you know, and when you say like, oh, I don't know where to get started, it's like, well, can you do it in your own household? Can you do it in your own family? I've never thought of it that way. And that makes a lot of sense because it's totally releasing control.
And it's a great way to start. Yeah. And as my kids are getting older, it's the same thing. I have certain chores that they're responsible for doing, and depending on their age, it almost takes more work to train them than it is to just do it yourself. But think long term. Yeah. Think later. They will be able to adequately do this up to your 80%, and then it's good. And so that's where we're at there as well. But having put in that time and that effort, then I can also outsource things around the house to my children because they have the privilege of living here. They have the privilege of eating food. They have clothes, all of these things. They are part of Team Luther. Yeah. And so as part of Team Luther, you contribute and we all contribute. And these are the ways that you can pull your weight. And so it applies to the whole family. No one's exempt from being a part and, doing what they can for the team. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I don't have children yet, but I'm thinking about my mother. I'm like, bless her heart, how she's raised me and my sisters. But then I'm thinking for my future children as well that I'd love to have, along those same lines. So that's really wonderful. The last main question I have for you, that I know that someone listening to this is going to think, wow, this is so wonderful. And all this information is great. And I would love to outsource. How can I afford it? And I think that's a huge barrier to sometimes finances are very tough, but sometimes it's more mindset. And so just, I would love for you to share a little bit on that idea.
So the two biggest, objections to outsourcing are they won't do it the way that I want it done, relinquishing that control, and I can't afford it. Those are so you have hit the two hot button things that people ask, and I get it. So as far as finances go and can I afford it, as a money person, having a background in accounting, that type of thing, I always say numbers don't lie. So I look at every time I'm going to outsource based on the numbers. So as a business, we're going to talk from a business side right now, if you sell your services, your hourly rate at $100 an hour, then you hire someone at, let's say, $35 an hour to do your administrative things. That's a very basic virtual assistant. You're going to pay more for bookkeeping, for marketing, other things. But we're using conservative numbers. So we have $100 an hour. If you do it yourself, that's essentially what you're paying to have that done because your time is worth $100 an hour. You could be providing services. You could be doing whatever it is to build your product, to make your whatever, any of those things, you are now investing in doing that task. And your rate is higher than what you would pay someone to do it. So by outsourcing that, you are already net positive because the difference between your $100 an hour to their $35 an hour is already, whatever it is, well over $50, and it's getting done faster. So then also you're paying them less time than what the time it took for you. So it just gets way more affordable than people realize. And so looking at it that way, you can then know if I sign XYZ more clients or sell XYZ more things, I know I can easily afford a virtual assistant or a bookkeeper or whatever because their rate is only this. So you just know by redirecting your time, you are winning. You're you're going in the right direction. So I always look at it that way because it is a concern. Can you afford it? That is a valid question, and not everybody can, but that's a very easy way to just break it down and know if I sell one more client on consulting for 4 hours every week, I can more than afford my virtual assistant for 4 to 5 hours a week. And then we're ahead. So then they're being more productive than what you were. You're now bringing in more money than what you're now paying out. So now you're more productive as a business.
Wow.
So you've just gone exponentially in the right direction. And the more you do that, you become more exponentially profitable. And that's where then you just get these results that you just didn't even know were possible because you're outsourcing. And it just trickles from there.
That is so good. You just put that so eloquently. And I know whoever's listening to this, and me too, listening to you speak right now, I'm like, oh, it's perfect science.
It's comforting.
Yeah.
Like then you know you're making the right decision. You're making the right choice because the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
2 + 2 always equals 4. And so when the numbers say go, when they say it's working, then you can. And that gives a lot of peace of mind for sure.
And that's truly thinking like a business owner, right? What would the CEO of the Fortune 500 company do? Like, would he be, or I say he, would she, whoever they are,
Either
exactly,
one.
would they be spending their time doing this thing for this, hourly rate of theirs, or would they be outsourcing it? They would probably be outsourcing it, so to kind of think in that mindset is a really great practice if you're wanting to scale your business.
Sure. It's a great way to start, and you can start at whatever level works for you, whatever tasks make the most sense for you. And
yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for providing all of this wonderful insight. I'm like really excited. Now I need to go. I've been in the process of actually outsourcing and kind of pushed it to the side. And now I'm like, okay, I need to go back and commit to it. So I'm inspired.
Sure. Good to hear.
Is there anything that you would like to share? Like any final thoughts that you would like to share?
I guess the only other thing that I would say is there are lots of different solutions for outsourcing. Like you can go to a virtual assistant firm for your business. You can find that little entrepreneur in your town that you can meet for coffee, or you can outsource overseas to the Philippines. And there are lots of different options. You just need to pick which makes the most sense for you. And it depends on what you need done, how you like to work. They all have their pros and cons. The virtual assistant firm is going to be what you need when you need it, as soon as you need it. The small business will have the special touch and that, you can meet for coffee and know them and all of that. And then overseas is going to be your most economical option, but it's going to require more of your time. So if finances are really an issue, that might be the place to start, but no, you're going to have more time involved. And sometimes that's like a little like gateway step into outsourcing. It's just like that first baby step. But yeah, so like there are different solutions. They all have their pros, all have their cons. And so just do the research to figure out what meets your needs. But I often recommend thinking long term because as the exponential progress in your business happens, you outgrow your current solution. And you're constantly pivoting and changing. So what's going to require the least amount of pivot with what you expect to happen in your business? So that would be the only other thing that comes to mind when I think about outsourcing and what would have helped me as I was starting to get into that aspect of my life.
That's super helpful. I really appreciate you sharing. And before I let you go, will you please tell us where we could find you online to connect with you, to learn more about Check Off Your List and all that good stuff?
Sure. So you can find Check Off Your List, my company, at checkoffyourlist.com. You can find us on Instagram at Check Off Your List and on Facebook at Check Off Your List. You can find us on LinkedIn, all of that. You can also find my podcast if you want to learn more about how I outsource and that process. That's COYL with RachelLuther.com. So check off your list, COYL. And then you can find me on Instagram at Rachel Luther or Facebook at COYL with Rachel Luther. And just, follow me there and feel free to reach out. I will definitely respond and answer your questions. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks for being here today and for sharing with us all the things that we need to do to work smarter, not harder.
Yes, for sure. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for tuning in today to another episode of Here for More podcast. We are just under 5 months out from our very first surf and yoga wellness retreat. This is put on by my husband, Jess, and I. We are so excited. We are taking a group of wonderful humans to Troncones, Mexico, December 11th to 18th. If you would like to know more details about our surf and yoga retreat, the link is in the show notes. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes, the link is right there, super clear, surf and yoga wellness retreat. All the details are there. If you can't find something there, email me, message me on Instagram at Natalie J. Kraus. I'm a super open book, and this retreat is for you. This is an extension of everything you get here at the podcast. So it's living here for more real time, living for more while surfing, while doing yoga on a beautiful outdoor deck. Oh, what more could you want? So go check out the link, send me questions if you have any, and I hope to see you in Mexico. All right, well, that's all I've got for you today. Just remember that you are here for so much more. Till next time.